Now we're good. Okay. Welcome, Melanie.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Rabbi Marcia. It's so nice to connect and to see you all back. Welcome. So last week we talked about what is Kabbalah? Like, where do we see that in the Torah? What's our teaching of Kabbalah? So what do you remember if I said to you, what is the study of Kabbalah? What do you recall or what stuck with you?
Um, we talked about the study of parallels, the seen versus the unseen, the um, the spiritual versus the what is real versus spiritual, and the physical versus spiritual, the finite versus the intimate. That was a big part of what we talked about.
Yeah. So thank you, Rachel. Right. So the idea of Kabbalah as being, if we're looking at our primary text in the Torah, Kabbalah as a study of parallels, and as Rachel said, seen and parallels of what? Seen and unseen reality, our physical and spiritual reality. How does the infinite create space for the finite to exist? And how does the finite, right, our physical bodies as vessels, hold infinite energy? And light and love, right? The immeasurable things that our physical vessels hold. Um, so we're going to dive. So does anyone have any questions or reflections on that from last week before we move forward into this week's topic?
Yeah, you were talking about the two lines, the two parallel lines, and
Uh-huh.
it was really interesting. I happened to mention to my wife, and she works with drug abuse and alcohol abuse. And someone texted her, I think from the Talmud, that says that as you go down the road of life, it's bordered by one side is fire and the other side is ice.
Huh.
Neither side is good or bad, but if you go too much to one side, you will become addicted. Too much to the other side, and the whole idea is to moderation is to take that road in between them. I thought it was kind of interesting because you were talking about the parallel lines.
Yeah, beautiful. And we talk a lot in
Mm.
Kabbalah about this holding opposites, right?
Yeah.
It's not that we want to live in one side or the other, right? It's just about how do we integrate the two and continuously, it's a dynamic energy of finding balance.
Would that also be like Derek Eric's too, when you talk about, the way you walk the land and behavior? They always talk about Derek Eric's.
Right. So how would you explain that? How would you make that
Well,
connection?
Derek Eric's means like when you show Derek Eric's and someone has Derek, that mean the meaning itself means walking the road.
Hmm.
And someone who has Derek Eric's, you always hope to meet. So it means someone who walks the road properly. It's the way you go through life and how you behave. And it's a very common term, Derek Eric's, show
Walk,
Derek
walk,
Eric's.
talk.
And so the way you walk that road in life. So if you got these two parallel lines, maybe that's the Derek Eric's is the way that you walk between those two parallel lines.
Yeah. There's actually
Mm.
I'm doing a coaching certification training and I did a one of my courses this weekend. And one of the things that they talked very much about was how do we step into things? So I could play with you with that another time, but yeah, the idea is that we get to choose, right, the perspective that we hold, and if we have one foot in one world and one foot in another world, right, how are we paying attention to that? So thanks for bringing that up, James. Right, and welcome everybody. If you the way that I teach is not lecturing for an hour. It's really about engaging in conversation. So if you can turn your camera on, that just makes it easier to talk with you rather than at you. If you're not turn your camera on, that's fine. But shoot me a sign if you want to participate in the conversation because I can't read your face. Um, and also, just before I start, I do want to acknowledge this was a tough weekend in the world. From the shooting at Bondi Beach to the shooting at Brown University, even to the death of Carl Reiner. The world feels heavy, and it's hard to imagine healing and peace when there's so much shattering around us. So I just want to acknowledge that as we move into our class today. And hopefully our class will bring us to a place on greater understanding and connection. And that's how we can bring healing into the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So last week, I left you with a question. If there was going to be a game of chess of two supercomputers, if two supercomputers would play chess games continuously, how long would it take to play every chess game? In other words, is there a finite number of games that could be played or an infinite number of games that might be played? Without looking it up on Google or ChatGPT, what's your gut? What does your gut tell you about that?
I don't play chess, so I mean, I would, I don't know, but I would say at some point, although it could be, you know, an incredible number that there would be, well, you know what, I won't even say anything. Howard raised his hand and Howard will know.
What does your gut say, Rabbi Marcia? If you're going to take a guess.
I would say that at some point there's something finite, but I don't know that I know that for a fact.
Yeah, it is finite.
In what realm of
Yeah.
finite? How would you
It's an
explain that, Howard?
extremely large but finite number.
Yeah. Great.
I would
What
say
else? I'm sorry, Rachel?
I'd just say I don't play chess, but I would say it's the same thing. It's a finite number.
Right. So at some point
Mhm.
there's an end point.
Mhm.
Right. So let's look at chess, and I'm going to open up just an image on the board on the screen. And as I share. Oh, Rabbi Marcia, can you give me permission to share, please?
Sure.
Thanks. There we go. Thanks. Okay. All right. So we're looking at a chessboard here, right? What do we know for anyone that plays chess or just can see this board? What do we know about the game of chess? What are the rules and the structure behind it?
But there are rules. There are certain moves you're allowed to make. You can only go in certain directions. You alternate moves. You lose pieces. You know.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
there's a structure to it. There are boundaries to it. There are.
So if we're starting with our chessboard, what are we starting with? How many squares are there?
There are 64 squares.
Right, 64 squares. Sorry, now they want me to buy it. 64 squares, right? It's an 8x8 grid. There's 64 squares. And how many pieces do we start with?
Each side has 16 pieces.
16 each.
Sylvia?
So yeah, I mean, Howard obviously is right, 16 each. And the thing about chess that is so fascinating is that it is a highly strategic game. I mean, you have to be thinking 3 to 5 moves ahead of you at all times if you want to even keep even. So my answer to the question is it finite? If it's me playing, it's totally infinite. I'm going to lose the whole time. I know that by experience.
So, right, and Howard, are you a chess or a math person or both?
Well, more math than chess, but I think the key let me turn my camera back on here.
Thank
I had
you.
my camera off for a second. Hi.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm more of a math and a chess person, although I do play chess. But the key point in the rules of chess for the question of whether they're in an infinite versus finite number of moves is that there are no infinite games in chess because there are no, whenever the position repeats twice,
Mm-hmm.
then the third time that the position repeats, the game ends.
Okay.
That is key because it means there's no infinite loops. And
Right.
since therefore, every game has to end in a win for one side or another side or an agreed draw, then there are no infinite games.
Right. So a game would get ended if you got into a draw, even if you were just going back and forth in the same
Right.
kind
The players can agree that neither one can win and then they just stop playing. But if they continue to play, still there cannot be an infinite number because eventually they will repeat positions.
Right. Okay. So if we were gonna look at this stats that I've found in my research, right? Chess has a finite number of pieces and squares, right? It has 64 squares and 32 pieces. Um, there are 400 different positions after each player makes one move apiece. There are over 72,000 positions after two moves apiece. And there are more than 9 million positions after three moves apiece. And then more than 288 billion different possible positions after just four moves apiece. Right. So while this is in the end, right, there's an ending to the game, the numbers are like mind beyond our understanding.
Mhm.
So when we talk about and I'm just going to look at Julian's comment here. He said it makes me think of as binary as two colors, two sides. 16 pieces is 2 cubed or 2 to the power of 3, and 64 squares on the board, 2 to the power of 6. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 4 is 16, 16 times 16. I think that gets bigger. Um, but right, the idea of multiplicity, right? There's so much that opens up in a game of chess, right? So when we talk about what's infinite and what's finite, right? There's the mathematical, like the qualitative nature of the infinite, or the quantitative nature of the infinite, like that infinity is a number that's beyond the last number we could think of or imagine. But there's also a qualitative nature of infinite, right? That like it's more than I can imagine, even if in the end there is a game. So if we say there are more than 288 billion possibilities after four moves apiece, like that number is kind of mind-blowing and more than we could imagine, except maybe if you're Howard and you're a math person, right? So, um, like even when we think about how far is far, right? We could say, oh, we could get to the end of the solar system. We could get to the end of the Milky Way. But one step beyond that, we know exists, right? The telescopes that we had in the 1960s and 70s are different than the telescopes that we have now, the Hubble telescope, right? We can see so much farther than we ever imagined, and we know there's beyond what we can even see. So we're going to be connecting today to this idea of the infinite as an aspect of unseen reality, which contrasts with the finite, measurable, physical world. So when we think about this question, right, of chess, is there a finite or infinite number of games that could be played? There are a finite number of pieces and squares. In the end, a game's going to end, right? There is a finite number of games of chess to play, but the number is so large from our own limited point of view, it's approximating infinity. So we'll call it the qualitative nature of the infinite. And so what's the underlying characteristic of chess that allows for almost a qualitative infinite amount of games that one can play? What's the nature of chess that makes it different? So if we're playing tic-tac-toe, canasta, right? What's happening, Sylvia?
Well, from what you both are talking about, it seems to me like what's so interesting about it is that it seems to keeps expanding. That the more moves you make, the more time, the more moves there are to be made.
Yes.
However, it's math, so it's got to be a stop. There is a stop somewhere.
Right. So, right, the more moves you make, the more possibilities there are. So why is that true about chess as compared to like tic-tac-toe? 9 squares, you fill them in, the game's over. It's done.
Well, chess has many more, but it also has a point where your moves start to repeat.
Okay.
If it's starting to repeat, it's going to end at some point.
Okay.
Good.
What else? What else is about the nature of chess? And I'll share the board again for you to look at it.
Well, you have numerous variables.
Okay.
You got 64 squares, the same as checkers, but you got 16 pieces that can move different ways. So you have
Yes.
more variables and
Whoa,
more
we almost tipped
possibilities.
over.
Sorry. Howard, can you mute
Honey, I
yourself?
brought your coffee cup down.
Howard, are you able to mute? The background noise a little
I am sorry.
It's okay. Thank you.
You
All right,
can
James,
do it.
continue.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's more variables, more,
Right. So there's more variables, right? You have 32 pieces. We have 8 pawns, right? They move
right.
forward
And you have
one.
all these various moves that that can be made in different ways
Okay.
from your pieces.
And what happens in a game of chess? What's going on the board? Sylvia.
As we're moving along, and yes, there are more moves to be made, except that we're losing pieces.
Yes. And so what happens on the board as we're losing pieces?
Then you have fewer moves to be made because you have fewer pieces to move, and because the object is to slay your opponent, basically, to get him
And,
off the board.
right, so when you get pieces off the board, what's happening in the field of play?
The play gets more finite, the smaller
Or
the
more,
area.
even the reverse, actually, right? Because as pieces come off the board, there's more space on the board, so more possibilities of places to move.
Maybe depending upon what pieces you have off the board.
True.
Because your whole object is to save that king who only has one move,
Yeah,
anyway.
right. So, but when we look at this board, right, there's 64 squares, 32 pieces. As we move along the game, there are going to be less pieces on the board and more squares available to play, right? So you'll never have less than 32 spots available, right? You might have 33 once I take your pawn, and 34 once you take my knight, and 35 once I take another pawn, right? So the more pieces that are removed from the board, the more spaces are opening up. So there's more possibility.
For the for the team that has more pieces.
Right.
Which
Right.
means that at some point that each team is going to have maybe one or two pieces. And one piece is going to be a king. I mean, everybody's going to have a king. But they can only move 2 places. So the person with something besides the king or besides a piece that has to move somewhere, at some point, a piece has to move somewhere and is not going to be able to protect that king.
Right. So a particular player's moves might be limited, but in the nature of the game, Howard, do you want to add to that?
Please.
You're doing great, Sylvia. Howard, do you want to unmute?
Julian put something in the chat.
Imagine that at the end of the game, you have left nothing but a king and a bunch of pawns. Some are the king's side, and both teams have a king and a bunch of pawns. Each one can only move 1 square at a time. So there may be a lot of open squares, but the remaining pieces cannot reach them. in
So,
the next move.
yeah,
Therefore, there are not necessarily more. Now there may be more moves, and eventually they can reach them, but at any given move, the pieces on the board can only move one square at a time. So
fair.
whatever piece you pick, it can only move one square. It can't move all the way across the board like a rook or a queen or a bishop.
Right.
So
So
the question is, does that mean that there are more or less than there were before the move options for where you can move?
what do you think? You're the math guy.
I think it goes up and then it goes down
Okay. Yeah.
in many games. Now, in some games, it never gets to the point where it goes down because the king is in check or something, like the previous speaker said.
Mm-hmm. Right. And as Julian's saying here, right, it's a bit like life or a game of life. You have to keep moving. There's a start and an end, and there's death, except there's no birth in chess.
Right.
And
Now, there is a very interesting math problem called the busy beaver.
okay.
A busy beaver is a little equation that if you, and what you do is you keep feeding the result of it back in to calculate the next busy beaver.
Huh.
And those feedback systems, if the equation is very cleverly chosen, they don't always go up and they don't always go down. They go up for a while, they go down, they go up for a while, they go down. And the question becomes, does it ever stop? Meaning, does it ever run out of space? Right? Does it ever always go back to zero? Or does it keep going, but it keeps going in a very jagged progression, so that at any given time you have no idea whether it's going to end up, going out into infinity or it's not. That's kind of like what chess is.
Yeah. Right. So again, the underlying characteristic of chess that allows for a qualitatively infinite number of games to play is this idea of movement and creating space on the board, right? That's different than a Connect Four where you're filling a grid, filling a matrix, right? Or tic-tac-toe where you're filling a matrix. Rabbi Marsha, was there something you wanted to add? You're just okay. So what we're seeing here is as pieces move and are taken off by the other player, that creates more space, and therefore that creates more possibility. And this is a metaphor for the question, right? How does the finite, right, the finite chessboard hold nearly infinite possibility? What's the image that's getting created here?
Are you saying are you asking the question, is the chessboard a metaphor for a person's life? I mean, well, I don't know where you're
If
going.
if the infinite, right? So part of the questions that the rabbis struggled with were if the infinite, right, which was everywhere and everything before creation, created space for creation to occur. The first question is how does the infinite hold the finite? And what we're looking at today is how does the finite, right, a chessboard, a 64 square grid, hold infinite, nearly infinite possibility? And what's the nature of chess that makes it special as compared to a tic-tac-toe or a Connect Four? And it goes to what Howard and Sylvia were sharing, right? The idea that when we play a game of chess, we take pieces off the board. And when we take pieces off the board, we create more space. And when we create more space, there's more room for possibility. Right? So as pieces move and they're taken off by the other player, right, that change becomes exponential, as Julian referenced, right? That change becomes exponential in our ability to create more creation within that framework. And there's also this term, and as Sylvia, you must be a chess player, mentioned earlier, it's a lot about strategy, right? There becomes this time in a game when there's no more space or no more possibility. And this is a term that they call in chess called Zugzwang, which means strangulation, right? Constricting the movement of the other player. When the other player doesn't have room to move, possibility is limited. Possibility is strangled.
There's also a question of human error.
Okay.
Meaning, you might have an option. Let's say a player is winning, and they actually have a move that would force checkmate, but they miss it.
Mm.
And then the other player escapes.
Okay.
So in the ideal, if you had a perfect player, the possibilities would be shrinking, but you have a player with limited knowledge or, that's not perfect. And they make a mistake, and therefore the mistakes create more possibilities and make the game bigger.
Right. And the grandmasters of chess are focused on the pieces, but they're also focused on the spaces, right? Because it's the spaces on the board that allow for possibility. And that's when we're getting to that distinction of chess as opposed to other games.
That's the strategy part.
Right. It's not
That was
about
talked about.
filling spaces, it's about emptying spaces. It's about creating space and finding possibility in spaciousness. Right. So when we're looking at a chessboard as a physical object that holds infinite potential, we can also use that as a comparison to ourselves. Right. If we are physical bodies, physical vessels that hold infinite potential, infinite light, energy, love, and so on, that's part of this question that the rabbis, the Kabbalists struggled with was how does the finite hold how does the finite hold the infinite? And what we've been describing to this point is the quantitative aspects of the finite and the infinite, right? A math person or a chess person will say, oh, well, there's 288 possibilities after the fourth turn, right? There's a number assigned to it. When there's a number assigned to it, that's quantitative, it's quantifiable. But there's also the qualitative aspect of chess or anything that we do in our life, right? The experience of flow in chess, in art, in music, in love, right? That you're not just focused on the strategy and the moving of the pieces, but you're kind of in the zone with it. Has anyone experienced flow in their own lives? Yeah. Tell me about it. Howard or Sylvia? You're muted. You're both muted.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep myself muted so the ambient baby noise doesn't
Oh, yeah.
bother everybody.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have experienced this. I've experienced it when I am deeply concentrating on things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't notice anything else. Nothing, I'm not there except for what I'm concentrating on.
Yes. Right. We're
I
stepping out.
also experienced it when I used to be able to run before I had both my knees replaced. I would experience it long distance running, where I would suddenly realize that time had passed and I had gone some distance, but I wasn't there.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I used to run
Mhm.
too. What about for you, Sylvia?
Well, I would say that was very interesting because I would say that when I was younger and I used to swim long distances and I'd get in the pool and I just swim and swim and swim, laps, laps, laps. I could go for like an hour, 2 hours just swimming. And all of a sudden I was there, wherever there was, because my total concentration was on the strokes and the lap, the
Mm-hmm.
stroke and the lap. And the other place I see it is when I'm painting. If I'm in the middle of a project or I start a project and it really grabs me, I could be at that project all day.
Yeah.
You know,
Right. The idea that when we're reading a book, right, or writing, or when we're in the zone, right, or flow, right, we're separating from time and sorry, we're separating from time and space. Sorry. In what ways do we separate ourselves from time and space? That we're not bounded by the boundaries, right? And that's that idea of the qualitative nature of the infinite, right? That we're just experiencing it, right? There's a scene from Finding Bobby Fischer, Searching for Bobby Fischer, a chess movie, right, where the protagonist wins by focus on playing rather than focusing on winning. Right? I'd show you a clip, but it's for 10 minutes and I don't want to take the time, but I'll put it in the chat. for you to look at another time. The idea that sometimes in life we're in the flow, right? Even as physical, limited, finite beings, we can experience the infinite. We can embody the infinite. That's right. So another question about the infinite and the finite is love, right? Is love finite or infinite? How would you describe it? James?
Oh, that's tough. I think it depends on who you're loving or what you're loving.
Kind of like chess.
Kind of like chess, right?
Uh, what's I think yeah, with flow, yeah, with love, I that's an interesting question, Um, yeah, like when I look at my kids, I think there's like an infinite love.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's not quite the same love as with my wife, but there's almost like an infinite quality. I just had a granddaughter,
Ah, that's
and so you see there's like there's a sense of flow from one generation to the next of this same energy. I don't know else how to explain it.
yeah.
Uh, but like there is a flow. I can feel like there's this continuation of this
Mm,
energy flow of the family of love, and so that I can see. I think it's also sometimes I think if you love somebody, I think their energy emerges with your energy to a certain extent. That there has to be an amount of sharing of energy for a flow. It's more.
yeah, beautiful. Thank you for that image. What's coming up for you, Rachel?
I mean, I think it can be an infinite energy that can transcend time and space. And I mean, I don't know if you've ever had the feeling that you have known someone in a past life
Mm,
and you meet someone, you have an instant connection and that it feels infinite. And um, so I think that kind of love and a heart connection just can feel infinite.
yeah. And like even, for folks that have had more than one kid, right? The idea
Mhm.
when the first child says, well, is there going to be enough love to go around, right? Of course there is. I may be more tired. I might have less energy. I don't have less love, right?
Right.
So love is not limited. I mean, there's some loves that end, right? Their
Mhm.
relationships end, but love is not limited. It expands and it increases. And love itself as an energy is infinite, even though our physical bodies are finite.
Mhm.
And love transcends physical limitations. Right. So just like there are games of chess that will end, right? Love itself may end, but love as an energy, right? It would be understandable to say that it's infinite. Love can't be measured, right? Love can expand and
Right.
increase. So if love is infinite and it's something we experience inside of us, and yet our bodies are finite, how can something finite hold something that is infinite?
Mhm.
Well, isn't that also like consciousness?
Yeah, say more about that.
Mhm.
We think, I always think like when we think, what is it? It's not matter. It's energy. What is it? When we have a conscious thought, what is it? Or is it what is emotion? It's not, the physical world, you're either matter or energy. But, what are these conscious thoughts and feelings? You know,
Ah,
Yeah.
it
do
it
they
is.
take up space like
Yeah.
matter? Are they energy like a flow? It's very interesting. Conscious thought, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
It is the thinking about thinking,
right.
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
the self thinking
Yeah.
about itself that generates the infinity. It's introspection, in
Mhm.
my opinion.
Mhm. So
right? And it is, in effect, these infinite loops that don't occur in chess.
wow.
Okay, that is what the difference is in thinking.
In
And
thought.
for now, if a computer starts doing that, it just never stops. Once you start a computer in an infinite loop, the only way to stop it is turn off the computer,
Oh,
right?
we could play that
But
with.
once you start a mind doing that, yeah, it may not stop, and then the person may go, off the deep end. But most people have the ability to stop, which is something that an automatic procedure does not ever have.
Yeah. Right. It's not just repeat, repeat, repeat.
People in general, and this has been proven mathematically by the guy who invented basically computers, Alan Turing, back in the 30s. He said if there's no way in general to make a program that can tell if another program is going to stop or not.
Hmm.
Okay, and the reason is that if you give that program itself as input, it will not be able to tell because it will stop. If it's not going to stop, it'll stop. And if it is going to stop, it won't stop.
Hmm. Interesting. It's an interesting
It's
image.
very, very interesting. Yeah. And he proved this. So to me, the question of whether a finite thing can hold infinity, if you look just at numbers, AI, there's no difference. I'm talking about in general. There's always a way to fool it. Okay. What I guess I'm if you look at the infinity of numbers, right?
Mhm.
How many numbers are there between 0 and 1?
As many as you want.
Right, because they're between any two of them, there's always another one.
Mm.
So there are the same number of numbers between 0 and 1 as there are numbers whatsoever.
Mhm.
The whole of the number of the infinity of numbers is contained in 0 and 1.
Yeah.
That is also a mathematical fact.
I'm gonna get you in touch with my son. He's like, yeah. All right. So, right. So again, the infinite array of possibility can exist within a container between 0 and 1. Right, Sylvia, I saw your hand was up. Do you want to jump in?
Well, you guys went quite a lot beyond me, but I was thinking about what we were talking about the infinite possibility of love, and where does it come from, and does it end? And if it ends, does it come back? Where has it gone? Now, tell you a little story. I have a friend who's at the end of his life, and I sit with him every day. I've known him for a while now, but was a Palestinian Jew born in 1930. So he's been through an awful lot. He didn't come here until well after the war. At some point, and he was he was a Talmudic scholar until he got involved in, the underground and stuff that he was doing, and got thrown out of every yeshiva school that there was to think about there. Um, and that's not what made him mad at God. It was something else, whatever, a lot of things did that. And since I've known him and I invite him to do things with me, and he'll say, I have a problem with God. I kind of know what it is. But now, since he's at the end of his life, he has asked for someone, not a rabbi, turns out to be me, and I'm not really good at Hebrew, um, to read the prayers to him in Hebrew. He doesn't want them in English, he wants them in Hebrew. Um, is that a return to the love of God, or just because he's afraid? I mean, I think that it's part and parcel. I mean, it's both, but I think that there's a return that maybe that love never disappeared. I mean, it disappeared kind of from his conscious, but not from his being. And the thing about love being like matter and an infinite may have something to do with that.
Yeah, it's possible, right? I mean, there's also this very Buddhist approach, right? I am not my thoughts, Right? How do we could say, like, even when my son was diagnosed with cancer, we'd say, like, I'm angry at God. It doesn't mean that I'm not on speaking terms with him, right? Or even I could say I'm not on speaking terms with God, but that doesn't mean I don't believe that a God exists, right? Or that there's something that's a higher power because I'm deciding that I'm not on speaking terms, right? That was our initial reaction. Um, you know, again, right? Love of the divine or love of another person or love for someone who's dying or dead, right? It doesn't mean that our love ends when they're physically gone. Love continues. And it could be in the same way framework we're talking about thoughts, right? Energy is neither created nor destroyed. Matter
Mhm.
is just energy in different layers, right? So if
Mhm.
if someone is buried, right, that doesn't mean that we don't love them anymore. They're not gone from our thoughts and our heart. And that's,
Nor is their love for us gone.
wait, say that again.
Nor is their love for us gone.
Right, right. We can still sense them and feel them and perceive them. The question is,
Mhm.
are we paying attention?
Well, I think that their love for us isn't gone as long as we remember them.
As long as we what?
Remember them.
We live with them?
Remember them.
Remember them. Thank you. Sorry.
Mhm.
Right.
Thanks.
I mean, if nobody remembers the person,
Right.
it's only the way that they continue existing is that the information about them, that of who they were and what they were like, continues in memory of
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah. Right. So
Well,
now,
they also touched each other people's lives in ways that they became part of that, a part of other people,
Right.
and their
Right.
so their energy became part of other people,
Right. And
even
they
if it
may not
wasn't a
even be conscious.
conscious,
Yeah.
right,
You're
might
right.
not be
They
a
may not.
conscious memory.
Thea,
May not be. Yeah.
Thea, do you
Mhm.
want to jump in here?
Yes,
Excuse me?
Thea's going to speak.
you noticed I unmuted myself.
Yeah.
I'm puzzling with something my Chabad rabbi said, and I'm not sure if I quote him well, but I follow something Kabbalah of meaning from GLI class, and at some point he said God is outside the universe, and I couldn't encompass that.
Hmm.
I think the universe is infinite. How can something be outside of that? I didn't question him, but maybe I will sometime. What do you
Well,
think?
gosh, well, I feel like, and we're going to get to this place too, that if God or the divine, right, is everywhere and everything,
Yeah.
then every cell contains divine energy.
Mhm.
So it's outside and inside at the same time.
But the universe,
The universe is part of,
almost, yeah.
right? Even if we look at the beginning of the story of creation, right? From the beginning, there was chaos and darkness over the earth, and God, whoosh, right?
I
God,
believe that, yes.
right? And the tohu wohu, like the chaos, if that's what you believe, according to the narrative, right? That if there was chaos and then the divine came in and created order, um, that divine energy is in each of those molecules, each of those cells. So I see your hand up, Howard, but I want to move forward a little bit, if that's okay. Do I have your permission to move forward? Okay, thanks. So again, right, the idea that when we look at love or divine energy as infinite, right, we're going to ask this question, if love that's infinite and it's something that's experiencing within us, yet we are physically finite, right? How can something that's finite hold something that's infinite? And what Kabbalah would say is that this is a false question, right? We aren't finite, and therefore we can hold something that's infinite, right? The love that we have doesn't die when we leave our bodies. That love remains. That's like what Rachel was saying. In a way, we can say that our bodies are inside of our love, not that the love inside of us. So now we're going to start flipping this on its head a little bit, that we begin to see that something that's as infinite as chess, right? Qualitatively infinite, can have almost an infinite amount of games. And something that appears to be finite, like our physical vessels as human beings, we hold an infinite amount of energy and love, right? And that is what, again, tapping into that unseen reality. It's there, hidden in plain sight, right? Whether it's on the chessboard with its spaces that allow for an infinite number of games to be played, right? Or the possibilities of love and the expression for love for us, through us in our lives. And what Isaac Luria Ha'ari, one of the Kabbalists in Sfat in 1570 would say, if God is infinite and fills all space, how is there room for anything else to exist? Right? Is there a need for anything else besides the infinite? Right? If God is in everything, is there anything else beyond God, beyond the infinite? Yes, Howard.
I thought about this for a long time.
Good.
I did, and I came to this conclusion partially because of things that Rabbi Tilchin said, and that our Rabbi Spitz said.
Mm-hmm.
I came to the conclusion that love is the reason.
Say more.
Because if there is a thing that has all possible attributes and capabilities and fills all space and is all possible things and has perfect foresight, right, in time, but is all alone, then it is a self-contradiction because it lacks something. It lacks anything that has to do with interacting with another, because there is no other for it to interact with.
Right.
And the main thing that is related to that is love. Because to love, it presumes that you are loving someone, which is another. And so God created the universe so that it would love him back and that he could love it. And the creation of consciousness is sort of how that happens, or the evolution of consciousness. He created a universe that can evolve. And by evolving, it learns to love God back somehow. Maybe not on this planet, but there's lots of planets, lots of stars and galaxies out there. Somewhere, probably sometime, something will learn to love God back.
Maybe, and maybe love is a construct, a human construct that we ascribe as something that is needed. We don't
That's
know.
also, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying this is
It's interesting, yeah.
what I came up
Love
with.
is the reason. Yeah. I mean, right. God says, according to the Torah narrative, right? God says it's not good for man to be alone, right? And God doesn't want to be alone. God forbid, right? Like make them like us living forever, right? That there is this idea of community and connection that's important in energy and in transformation and in creation. There's actually do I have a book here? Rabbi Adina Allen, who's based in Northern California, created this organization called the Jewish Studio Project. I think I referenced it last week. And you love her. Yeah, I love her too. And she wrote this book called The Place of All Possibility. And she starts with the idea that if we're created in the image of God, then we are created as inherently creative beings. Right? We all contain potential for creation. And her other piece in her opening is there's a teaching that says God created the world with wisdom. And what if we looked at it as wisdom, not as like wisdom, but wisdom as another character? God and wisdom were in on this together, right? Nothing could be created alone. And I think that also goes to what Howard was saying, the idea that just as God created the world with chokhmah, with wisdom, we need partnership, we need connection in order to create. Right? Even Jewish learning isn't about studying a text alone. It's about being in community and gnawing on text together. And that's the place of all possibility. And I would say that even when we think about the spaciousness, right, of if the divine is infinite and takes up all the space, how did God create space for creation to occur? God needed to withdraw God's self, right? So this concept is called Tzimtzum or contraction. And I think about it not as God making God's self smaller, but rather God expanding like a womb, expanding like a piece of glass being blown, a balloon being expanded. That when we create expansiveness, when we have more space on that chessboard, there's more space for possibility. There's more space for creation to occur. And that's that idea that comes from Isaac Luria, right, from the late 1500s. The idea about how the universe came to be through the interconnectedness of all reality. That if this light was everywhere and everything, that energy of God, of the divine, was everywhere and everything, God needed to withdraw God's self in order to create space for that light. But how could one create a vessel that holds the infinite? How could one create a finite vessel that holds the infinite energy? Right? It's a paradox. It's a seeming paradox.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do you ever feel like your heart's so full and it might explode, like looking at your grandchild, James? Right? I mean, I feel that way with my twins turned 18 last week, right? They're applying to colleges. My daughter's in Israel with her school right now. Like, just wow, like they are becoming, and I am just like expanding with them. My heart grows and explodes with them. Um, that the more space we create, the more possibility that exists within that. And that's that metaphor of creation that I'm playing with today. And on the chessboard, right? The more spaces that are opened up, the more possibility that exists to
Well,
play that.
even we'll get more to the physical world, but if you think about it, when mankind, or at least when Western civilization discovered the Americas, it was a vast wilderness. They saw as this vast open space that we really developed and created over the last couple hundred years, right or wrongly. But you can anytime you have space or that frontier, the new frontier, it opens up possibilities, space itself.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, one of the problems is, everyone's talking about the housing problem. I know you're not here in California, but all these shortages. One of the reasons is we don't have the same open spaces we've had, 100 years ago to deal with it. It's
Yeah.
it's always finding new space.
Yeah. Right. And even that natural process, I mean, the fires you had last year were tragic, right? And I believe man-made, right? But when we have natural fires and that are part of the process of creation and
That's
destruction,
right. Yeah.
there was
Yeah.
much.
Most of California is based on natural fire, our
Yeah.
ecosystems out here in California
Yeah.
and most of the Western United States. You have to have fire every
Yeah.
once in a while as
And
part of the ecosystem.
you
Melanie,
also, right?
Melanie,
Yes.
Melanie, could you please explore a little more about the concept you mentioned, the paradox? Because you touched about my question.
Yeah. Here, it was something I was talking about in a prior class this morning. So I'm going to just open that up and share the screen with you. Um, right. If the divine is everywhere and everything,
Hmm.
and how does the divine, right? How does the infinite create finite vessels that can contain infinite energy? Is that physically possible or spiritually or theologically possible? Thank you, Sandra.
Yes, but
How?
you mentioned the concept of God creating that,
Right.
creating infinite.
Right. So the teaching and that we're going to get into in deeper depth next week. So what we looked at today was how does a finite hold the infinite? And what we're going to look at next week is how does the infinite hold the finite? Right.
Hmm.
So Rabbi Marsha?
Well, I was just thinking, and I almost feel like this is like such a no duh that I probably even shouldn't say it, but I think I think that's really the essence of the Torah, specifically the way that we relate to the Torah. Like it is, I mean, on some level, it's a finite, on every level, it's a finite document. There's the same number of letters in every scroll. It says what it says. But the way that it was crafted with a multiplicity of voices, if you understand that, really this within this finite document, there is literally an infinite number of ways to understand, relate, connect, reconcile, whatever. I mean, I feel like that's would be the example I would use about how something finite can contain the infinite.
Yeah.
But that's probably too basic for this class or
No, it's
something.
not. I mean, even if you
No,
think it's totally, I'm teaching a class right now on Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, right? And
Mm.
his approach of choice, right? That space between experience and or action and reaction, right? We have a space on how we choose and how we respond, right? We get to choose. And that ties into the coaching workshop I did this week about shifting perspective, right? We get to choose our perspective. And even if we turn around in our room, right, and look at a window or look at a picture, look at my computer screen, like it's going to give a different perspective on how we see the same problem. And how many of us are there? 16, 17, 18, the 12, 14 of us, right, could look at the same screen and sit in the same class and walk away from it and say, hmm, I can see this in a different way, right? Sylvia's takeaway is going to be different than Eleanor's, is going to be different than Rachel's and James's and Thea's and Rabbi Marcia's, right? Just based on our own experience and narratives and constructs and bias that we bring to the class. So Rabbi Marcia, like what I hear you bringing up is this idea of interpretation, right? And we could talk about the levels of Pardes, the acronym of Pshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. There are 4 levels of understanding text, right? In the beginning of the Torah, it says, let there be light. So Pshat, right? The basic level is, so there was light, right? The next level is, well, what's that light a metaphor for? And then the Drash, like we go a little bit deeper. And then the Sod is like this mystical, secret kind of interpretation of what is that, right? Any story, any narrative, any text, we can bring our own meanings to it. And we could look at things that are as mundane as like making a sandwich or folding laundry. And I could say, well, I'm making a sandwich or folding laundry. But then we could say, wow, like um, this is a way that I give love to my family, right? This is a way that I create order to my home. This is a way that I connect to humanity, right? Like we can find deeper levels, even the most mundane things that we do. And going back to, Thea's question, is this always this process of revealing, right? Of pulling back the layers, unveiling. They say the Torah is like covered in garments, and our job is to start to peel back the garments so we could see that, see that deeper understanding inside. Get beyond the symbolic layer to get to the deeper levels, the mystical understanding of what we're looking at, right? We can all look at the same text, have different interpretations of it.
Isn't one of the ways that the infinite can hold the finite is by repeating? Like we read the Torah yearly, we keep repeating and repeating. We got the cycles of life.
Yeah.
We have the seasons, and that basically we keep repeating over and over that infinite. And then every once in a while, there's a slight change or something is revealed to us in these cycles that we haven't seen before.
Right.
But it's we have birth, we have death, we started over again. Even within nature, you have all the seasons and the whole interaction between the sun, water, temperature, and things do change. But by
Yeah.
repeating, we could change slowly, and we see these things played out.
Yeah. I mean, right, every time we look at a text, every time we read a book, look at a painting, sit down, where we're experiencing it differently. We can find different meaning. Right? Another teaching is that a man never steps in the same river twice because he's not the same man and it's not the same river.
How does time play into all of this?
Oh, that's a whole nother
Okay. Because I start to see there's an element of time now emerging.
That's my spring course if you want to sign up for that. Right. Time is a spiritual time versus physical time. If you think about the construct of counting the Omer, right? What's the difference when we count up in time versus count down in time? How do we relate to time differently, right? How do we say, well, we're going to meet at 12 noon Mountain, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 o'clock Eastern, right? Different times for all of us, but we all agree on what time it is, right? So time is also, right, interesting to navigate with that. So I forget Thea's original question, but how does the infinite create a finite vessel to hold the infinite? Right? In our story of creation, those vessels explode. Right? That's the shattering of the vessels. And each of these vessels holds infinite energy and infinite light. And our job as humans, according to this Kabbalistic teaching, is tikkun olam, right? That construct that we know that's very familiar in American Jewish life, the idea of repairing the world, right? Picking up those shards and putting them back together again. And even in the brokenness, right? And this goes back to where we started today, right? Even in the brokenness, there's light and there's healing to be done. In Japanese art, there's this image of pottery, like a pottery that's broken gets sealed back together with gold. And then that pottery becomes even more beautiful and more valuable. Right? And gold in Spanish is ore, or is aura, or yeah, aura in gold in Spanish, that's gold, right? And that's connected to ore, right? The ore of light, of energy, Vayahi ore, right? That light, and Leonard Cohen, right? There's a crack in everything. That's where the light gets in, right? We talk a lot about brokenness. So what we're going to go into this deeper next week, the idea of creation through the Kabbalistic lens. But that's the on one foot understanding of God creating these vessels that can't contain that infinite energy, and therefore they shatter. It's a perfect imperfection that's created, an imperfect perfection. All right.
Well,
Yes, Rabbi
thank
Marcia.
you. No, I was going to say, I just want to say thank you for such heartening and thought-provoking class. So tell me again what next week holds. Where are we going from here?
Next week, we're going to be looking at the Kabbalistic understanding of creation, as Isaac Luria came up with it, with Tzimtzum, God's contraction, the Shevirat HaKlalim, the shattering of the vessels, and Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. And going
And then
through.
we're going to skip a week. We're going to skip December 29th, and Melanie's last class is going to be January 5th. So I'm so glad you all joined us. Welcome, Fia. Looking forward to getting to know you, and good to see all of you. Hopefully, we'll see you next week.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's so nice to
Hanukkah Sameach.
Hanukkah Sameach. Yeah, be the light, you guys.
Pride and all the heart you have, because no time like the present to advertise the miracle of our peoplehood still in the 21st century. We're blessed and hopefully continue to be for many millennia to come.
Great. Hanukkah Sameach. Thank you for a wonderful class. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Howard, are you a math professor?
No,
No.
Howard and James, it was
I'm
very
I'm a venture capitalist, but I used to be a software developer a long time ago, so I had to take a lot of math.
Cool. Yeah, my son wants to study applied math in college.
Good for him.
Yeah, he's a math guy.
Well, in applied math, if he wants to study this kind of stuff, he needs to take foundations of mathematics and set theory.
Yeah, he's been taking college math. He's taking I don't know, Diffie-Q. No, he took Diffie-Q. Now he's taking numerical analysis. I just pictured numbers sitting on a couch being analyzed. Whenever I think about that. Yeah, he's a math guy. And he
Cool.
wants to apply it in biology or oncology and do research.
Howard, do you know that you know Melanie? I don't know if do you remember when Solomon Gruenwald was our intern back in 2007 and 8.
Yes.
Well, they're related, they're married. And
Oh.
so Melanie and Solomon were often at our congregation back in the day before they moved to Denver in 2008.
And
So
those are
Oh, so you're in Denver. Okay. Well, if you want to set up something with your son, just I guess Rabbi Tilchin knows how to get in touch with me, and I'm glad to talk to him. And if it's helpful, if he thinks it's helpful, and you think it's helpful, I'll spend a little time with him on the phone or in a Zoom.
appreciate it. Thank you.
that's lovely.
I will say this about mathematically, the breaking of the vessels doesn't have to happen
Huh.
because there's different sizes of infinity.
Wow.
Yeah, in fact, there's an infinite number of different sizes of infinity. And in fact, there's so many different sizes of infinity that you can't even count the number of sizes of infinity.
An infinite number.
Gotta go. This is so fascinating. Gotta go.
How can there be more than one
Fascinating.
size of infinity?
Oh, it's very simple. I could prove it to you. This was proven by a guy named Georg Cantor, who invented set theory back in the late 1800s. But you know what a decimal number is, right? You start with a decimal point. There's some number of numbers going off to the right, right? And sometimes they end up repeating the same thing, right? Like they all, like a half is equal to 0.05 with a bunch of zeros, right? But it's also equal to 0.049. It's 0.4999999 with an infinite number of nines.
Right.
Okay, so if it's really infinite, how do you ever know whether those two things are the same number or not, right? So you have to go out an infinite amount to find that out, right? So we say they're the same number. Okay. But what Cantor did was he said, suppose you could count all those type of numbers. So there would be a first decimal number and a second decimal number and a third decimal number and so forth. And you put them in a row, right? And you put them in a row, say, by how big they are. Well, one thing, you never get past the first number. Right? Because how far out do you have to know to make sure that it's smaller than the second number? So there's an infinite number of numbers between any two numbers. It means you can't count them. And therefore, the number of counting numbers is infinite because we start with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can always add one more number.
Right.
It's all a concept.
But between any of those numbers, there's an infinite number of other numbers.
Yeah, it's a concept we made up.
Right. So therefore, what it turns out is that if you take any set, the number of things in the set, the number of subsets you can make out of those things, and we talked about this, like the number of relationships you can have, right, between the things in it. The number of subsets in a set of any size is 2 to the power of the number of subsets. Or 2 to the number of the power of the number of things in the set. So let's say you have 8 things, right? Well, 8 is 2 to the third power. Okay.
Well, I just want to say, Melanie is the host, and when she says goodbye, we're all going to be kicked off.
Okay, so that's how it works. Anyway, so that's why there's more. The number of subsets in a set of any size is 2 to the power larger than the original set, and that's why there's different sizes of infinity, and they get bigger and bigger.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay, sorry.
Very interesting.
Amazing.
Thank you. Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.
Bye, everybody.
May we all be redeemed.
Amen.